You know the feeling. You're floating in the ocean, the shoreline a comfortable distance behind you, and then the seabed drops away into blue-black nothing. Your legs are dangling over an emptiness you can't measure, and something ancient in your chest tightens. You haven't seen anything. Nothing has touched you. And yet every cell in your body is suddenly screaming one word: out. That feeling has a name: thalassophobia, the intense, primal dread of deep or vast water. And here's the question that's going to haunt us for the next few minutes, the one we won't answer until the very end. What did this fear evolve to survive? Now, a caveat, because we respect you too much to lie. The idea that this dread is a direct inheritance from something that once hunted our ancestors is a hypothesis. It's proposed, not proven. Scientists still aren't sure the link runs that clean. But what isn't debated is that humans carry a documented threat defense system, a survival optimization system built to react to danger before we consciously understand it. The instinct is real. The question is what it remembers. Because here's the thing about the ocean. The water is the same, only the tenants have changed. And to understand the fear, you have to meet the reasons for it. So we're going to start over 400 million years ago, back before anything on land had a spine to be afraid. Meet Dunkleosteus. The name honors a paleontologist named Dunkel, which makes the translation something like Dunkel's bone, a delightfully humble label for what is essentially a swimming guillotine, because that's what this thing was. Not a fish so much as a rumor with a face made of armor plating. Picture it coming out of the Devonian gloom. The older, splashier estimates put the biggest ones somewhere around 4 to 6 meters, roughly the length of a small car cruising toward you at eye level. Now, fair warning to the nitpickers in the comments, and we love you. Recent studies from 2023 argue Dunkleosteus was actually shorter and stockier than we used to think, more armored linebacker than long torpedo. Either way, it is a car-sized predator, and you are not a car. Here's its signature trick, the thing that should genuinely ruin your day. Dunkleosteus had no teeth, not one. Instead, its skull carried bony jaw plates that ground against each other every time the mouth closed, sharpening themselves like a self-honing pair of blades. This was a creature that came pre-installed with maintenance-free cutlery. So let's put you in the water, because that's what we do here. You wouldn't feel teeth, because there weren't any. You would simply feel a pressure, then a strange lightness, and then the deeply confusing realization that the top half of you was now negotiating with a different current than the bottom half. You wouldn't be bitten, you'd be sheared. Modeled bite forces at the blade edge push past 7,000 newtons. And no, ignore that viral 80,000 psi number floating around. Someone mangled the unit, which, honestly, is the funniest and most horrifying part. Dunkleosteus invented decapitation before jaws were even fashionable. It was terrifying, but it was also slow and heavy and wearing a suit of bone. The ocean's next tenant would throw the armor away entirely and trade it for something far worse, a saw where its mouth should be.
Now we get weird. Helicoprion. The name means spiral saw, and for once, paleontology names something exactly what it looks like, because this animal appears to have swallowed a circular saw blade and decided to keep it. For nearly 100 years, this thing broke scientists' brains. All they ever found was the whorl, a perfect coil of teeth spiraling inward like a nautilus made of knives. Nobody knew where it went. Was it on the snout, curled off the dorsal fin, hanging out of the mouth like some kind of prehistoric party favor? Reconstructions from the last century are genuinely hilarious. A parade of confident guesses that were all completely wrong. Then, in 2013, CT scanning finally cracked it open. The whorl sat in the lower jaw, tucked into the throat, the whole spiral tucked away like a loaded mechanism. And here's the detail I find weirdly tender. The baby teeth stayed at the very center of the coil for life, with each larger adult tooth spiraling outward as the animal grew. It carried its entire childhood in in its jaw. That's almost sweet. It is also a device for reeling soft-bodied prey inward and slicing it apart as the jaw closed. So much for sweet. Put yourself in the Permian Sea. Something you can barely see rushes up from below, and there's no bite in the way you'd expect. Instead, there's a pull, a mechanical drawing in, as that spiral rotates prey deeper into a mouth built like a deli slicer. Or at least, that's the leading idea. Because, I'll be honest with you, the exact mechanics are still not settled. Nobody's fully sure how it worked. So go ahead, drop your best theory in the comments. You're allowed to guess. Everybody else did. Helicoprion is proof the ocean was still experimenting. But experiments end. What came next wasn't a prototype. It was perfected, and it was the size of a school bus. Okay, deep breath. Let's step back from the edge for a second, because I think we've scared ourselves into a corner, and you deserve some good news. Here's the good news. Not one of the monsters we've met was hunting you. They couldn't have been. Humans didn't exist. We wouldn't show up for hundreds of millions of years. To Dunkleosteus, you are not prey. You are a rumor from an impossibly distant future. All that armored, self-sharpening menace was aimed at fish, at squishy things, at each other, never at us. And honestly, that's true right down to the present day. We tell ourselves the ocean is a murder pit that wants us dead, but the ocean mostly just wants to be left alone. Even sharks, the animal our whole culture has cast as the villain, almost never attack people on purpose. The overwhelming majority of bites aren't some calculated hunt. One 2025 study even suggested that a small slice of shark bites, somewhere in the neighborhood of 5%, might actually be self-defense. The shark reacting to us, not preying on us. A frightened animal, not a monster. We're often the ones who blundered in. So here's the comforting reframe. The water is the same water it always was. It isn't out to get you. It changed tenants, not intentions. So maybe the fear really is overblown. Maybe we can all relax. Except the deep saved its single biggest tenant for last. And this one really could have eaten you whole.
Now we meet the tenant the deep saved for last. Its name means simply big tooth, which is the single most inadequate description in the history of science. Like calling the sun the warm thing. Megalodon, the largest shark that has ever existed. The females stretched roughly 13 to 17 meters long. And to make that real, imagine standing beside a railroad car, because that's the length, and at up to 50 tons, that's roughly the weight, too. A single tooth measured over 18 centimeters. That's not a fang. That's the size of an adult human's hand, splayed wide, serrated along every edge, and it had rows of them. The bite is estimated at up to 40,000 pounds of force. For reference, that's not worse than a lion. That's a category of physics. There is a debate worth flagging, because we respect the nitpickers. A 2025 study argues the true ceiling might have reached over 24 meters. Take that as the outer edge of the possible. 13 to 17 is the safe number, and the safe number is already a nightmare. So let's put you in the water one final time. Except here's the thing, and this is the part that should genuinely rearrange your insides. You would not be prey it hunts. You'd be prey it wouldn't even notice. This was an animal that tore chunks out of whales, that treated a full-grown whale the way you treat a chicken wing. You, floating there, are a crumb. You wouldn't be a meal, you'd be a rounding error. And now, the part that makes the room go quiet. Megalodon is not some impossibly ancient thing from the dawn of time. It cruised these oceans until only about 3.5 million years ago. In deep time terms, that's practically last week. The relatives of our own ancestors shared a planet with this. Somewhere, something looked at that shadow and felt exactly what you feel standing at the edge of a dark pool. Megalodon is gone, but the water it swam in is still here, which leaves only one question, the one we opened with. So, back to you, standing at the edge of the water, legs dangling over that blue-black nothing, that old alarm going off in your chest for no reason you can see. We asked at the start, what that fear evolved to survive. And here's the honest answer, the one that respects both the science and you. The idea that this dread was handed down to us directly, gene by gene, from something that once hunted our lineage, that's still debated. Nobody can prove the wiring is inherited. It may well be cultural, learned, passed through stories rather than DNA. But the tenants were real, every one of them. The guillotine, the buzzsaw, the whale eater. So even if the instinct isn't a memory, the fear still has a rational lineage. You are not being irrational at the water's edge. You are simply the newest tenant, standing in very old water, feeling the weight of everything that used to own it. That's the payoff. The water is the same. It always was. Only the tenants change, and something in you still remembers the lease. Now, over to you. How do you think Helicoprion actually used that spiral saw? Nobody's sure. Convince me in the comments. And if a saw-jawed fish and a whale-eating shark weren't enough, wait until you see what the deep is still hiding, down where we've barely even looked.